Express now. There's controversy around ULEZ. No, that's not a slur for gay women. It's BBC shenanigans, Nicholas. What's this? You should know because you used to work at the BBC, so you can tell us.
Yeah, okay, so this is a wonderful story again, and thanks to the producers. I know it should be random, but yeah, so basically we've had a BBC journalist who has turned whistleblower, and he has provided Reform UK, who happen to also have a mayoral candidate for London, with information. Let me read the title first. Whistleblower accuses BBC bosses of collusion with Sadiq Khan to silence ULEZ criticism. Essentially, BBC journalists, at least in this department, have been told that any story about malcontent or protests against ULEZ must be first approved by the highest order, highest editorial level.
ULEZ is the ultra-low emission zone, which is Sadiq Khan project.
Yeah.
The idea here that Sadiq Khan or Sadiq Khan's office has been putting pressure on the BBC and saying, look, if you're going to be critical of this, or effectively trying to ward off that kind of criticism. But what's weird about this, Steve, is, as Nicholas says, is BBC executives actually passing that on. If this is true, we should clarify, if this whistleblower is accurate, passing on that as an edict to members of the BBC saying, basically, let's be politically partisan. Is that right?
Well, I mean, you've got the full say. I used to work for the Beeb as well.
Did you?
Yeah. And I used to work on the radio in the South East, which was co-sited with BBC South East. So yes. I know the people they're talking about in this. Actually, I've worked with Howard Cox as well before, because he used to turn up on that radio show. I did loads. And I'm no fan of the ULEZ, but I do have to say, you look at this story and realise this is just what the BBC's like. If they get complaints, then this is about getting more senior eyes looking over something.
OK.
So they're not saying the stories will be stopped, but the bosses higher up need to have a look at it because they are too worried about criticism. It shouldn't be a left or right thing. This is the same week where Clive Murray wasn't allowed to read some news because of fear of criticism from the right. This is fear of criticism.
So you don't think it's because the majority of the BBC staff are in tandem ideologically with Sadiq Khan?
Yes.
No,
well, Nicholas says yes.
But then why is there this worry of taking Clive Murray off news when he's done Have I Got News? I think
you will have the occasional Nicholas there.
No, but I don't think it has to... I think it's more to do with the guidelines of the BBC and them tying themselves in knots to make sure they've done compliance and all of these long things that keep them employed.
I agree, but what happens as a producer or former producer, you know that when they say, because the story is true, by the way, the BBC official here hasn't denied it. They have only said that this is not a rare occasion. Right. But as a producer, you know, once they say, oh, some stories, red flag, it needs the highest level of clearance, as a producer, you just don't bother going after your big boss to bother them.
Though?
No, it's not your failing, because you will have another job interview within the BBC when they will ask you, okay, how many times did you refer things up to your boss? And it's not a good thing to bother your bosses because you need to be independent. Okay, so you say, you know, you might as well not ruffle any feathers and just drop the story altogether.
Well, that's interesting. We've got insight there from a former BBC producer.